Let's talk about NBA gap years. It's been on my mind over the last couple hours or so, and I feel like this upcoming season of 2025-2026 season, there are a few teams that are uniquely in a position to potentially have a gap year. Now, in my mind, the way I would define gap year in a sports sense is a team that has traditionally been good over the last few seasons that have to turn the dial back for 1 year and with the intent to eventually turn that dial right back up. It's like school, right? I was in theory supposed to be taking a gap year to see if YouTube could work. I ain't never go back. So my gap year turned into a lifetime. And some of your favorite teams been on a lifetime gap year. You know what I'm saying? But there are two teams in basketball, one of them that was just in the NBA Finals, that could potentially be turning that dial back a little bit for the future. Now, before we talk about the gap year, I want to talk about how I even got here. It's the off season, right? And people are going through old tweets. And last year, Patrick Williams signed a 5-year, $90 million contract. And some bonehead on X quoted as saying, good value, W. That guy didn't know what the hell he was talking about because comparative to the contract that he was paid, Patrick Williams was one of the worst players in basketball last season. So I'm thinking about that, not just because I'm a Bulls fan and I have to root for this team. And Patrick Williams, if you're watching this video, trust me, I still believe, at least a little bit. I was just thinking about the 2020 draft class and how there are a few teams that regret missing in that draft. Of course, the Bulls being at the top of the list. When you jump up from whatever odds they had to the top 4, you needed to hit that pick, and we didn't. Now, again, the Bulls are not one of those teams that was on a gap year. They're just perennially really bad. But in that same draft class, there was a team also in the top 4 that was going through their gap year. And that team was, of course, the Golden State Warriors. We have to remember where we were on the timeline. The year before this, they had just lost in the NBA Finals. Kevin Durant went over to Brooklyn, and now the Golden State Warriors are trying to put some pieces back together. Also, Klay Thompson, of course, being out with his multiple leg injuries, right? They go into that season. Steph Curry plays, 4 games before he breaks his hand against the Suns, and now they're looking around like, hey, we have our own first-round pick this season. Let anybody hoop for us. This is going to be our gap year. And, well, they were bad, like really, really bad. They win, 15 games that season? And that is how they end up with the number 2 overall pick. In the midst of their gap year, they traded away some assets to end up getting a future first-round pick. That future first-round pick turned into, of course, Jonathan Kuminga. So during their gap year, they jump up to the 2nd overall pick. The year after that, they were better, but not as good. So the next year, they have 2 lottery picks, again, that turned into Kuminga and Moses Moody. And because of the situation with Kuminga, and we don't know where his value is at or if he'll be on the team next season, if he is on the team, who's going to be happy, and so on and so forth, we can just, as of today, say that the 3 picks they had in the 2020 draft class and the 2021 draft classes were misses. Just misses. The gap year is supposed to bridge what your previous team looked like, the team that was a contender, or the team in this case that won multiple championships, was supposed to bridge them to a new era where they could continue their contention. Now, in the Golden State Warriors defense, of course, they went on to win another championship. A lot of the young guys that we mentioned in the 2020 draft class and the 2021 draft class, and a lot of those guys didn't really contribute that much to that championship, but damn it, they won a championship and they continue to keep that window open. But now we're in 2025, one of those guys is off the team and damn it, basically out of the league, and both of the other guys are there, but we're questioning what their role even looks like. So you can say that in the Warriors gap year, they didn't get full value. And again, getting full value in the gap year, based on all the instances that I have in my head that I've been thinking about over the last couple hours, bridging that gap has been extremely difficult for teams across the association in recent history. You could argue that the Philadelphia 76ers just completed their gap year in the 2024-2025 season, where they made a big acquisition of Paul George. He didn't play well. Joel Embiid is in and out of the lineup, and they end up retaining their own first-round pick and ended up getting VJ Edgecombe. Now, we still have to figure out what VJ is going to turn into as a player and figure out if that was more of bridging the gap or starting or turning a new leaf completely. We don't really know with the 76ers, but, they were in a similar situation. And again, getting back to the 2020 draft class, again, even though the Warriors did go on to win one more championship, shout out to Wiggins and company, if they would have hit on one of the three picks that we're talking about, the 2020 and 2021 draft class, we could be looking at the Warriors a lot differently in 2025. Now, in their small stretch where they had Jimmy Butler, Steph Curry, and Draymond Green, they were pretty damn good. And Steph Curry got injured in the postseason, and we don't really know what would have happened if he stayed healthy. But I find it hard to believe that based on what we just saw in the 2025 playoffs, that this team full of dinosaurs, and in their defense, like legendary dinosaurs, and Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond Green, who are all going to be Hall of Famers. Could that team of dinosaurs win 4 series in the postseason? Like how physical and grinded out every single game was for the OKC Thunder, or every single game was for the Indiana Pacers. It's hard for me to see that old team being able to do that. But that's why if you hit on 2020 or 2021, these young guys are ushering in, and it's like, we cool, Jimmy. Of course you can do your thing, but I got this. They don't really have that. But again, let's get to now the current day. And I'm going to start off with the Pacers. Now, the Pacers and the Celtics, those are the two teams I'm really talking about in today's video. Both of their staffs have come out publicly and said, stop with this gap year shit. Don't call it that. We're trying to compete. And of course, they should be saying that, right? I mean, the Pacers just were in the Game 7 of the NBA Finals, but they lost their All-NBA player, a guy that has been the system. And Rick Carlisle just did a really good interview with Caitlin Cooper at Basketball She Wrote. I'll put the link in the description. Go subscribe because she's one of the best in the entire game right now. And it opened up my eyes a lot to, like, I guess the mindset of a legendary coach. And of course, he's not looking at this season as a gap year. He's talking about how Nembhard's going to have to step up, or how Benedict Mather has continued to evolve his game, or how Pascal Siakam has molded his game to be Pacer-centric, but now he may have to turn it back just a little bit to get back into your bag, Pascal, because you're missing Tyrese Halliburton. All, again, such a great interview. But not only are they missing Tyrese, of course, they lost Miles Turner to the Milwaukee Bucks. So even if they believe that they're going to compete and they believe that they're going to go on another deep playoff run, it's hard for me to get there without Halliburton. And the Pacers have been a team historically that just competes. Like, there's a team that's going to be in the playoffs every single year, regardless of the situation. I think on that team that just went to the NBA Finals, only one of those guys was a top 10 pick, and that was Benedict Mather. Like, everybody else on that team, if they were drafted by the Pacers, were a later draft pick, or again, acquired via trade. So it will be, I don't know, foreign for them to look at it as a gap year. That's never been their priorities. But I could see it being, in both of these cases, the Pacers in the Celtics case, a blessing to look at it as a gap year. Now, in the Golden State Warriors sense, in 2020, they didn't go into that season thinking it was going to be a gap year again. Steph Curry broke his hand, and then the wheels fell off. And even though Steph Curry could have played a little bit earlier, they were like, okay, let's retain his pick. Let's have it be a good pick. So again, I'm not advocating for Rick Carlisle to be pulling Pascal Siakam in a close game so they could get a loss. But I'm thinking about what the 2026 draft class looks like and thinking, if they ended up having a lottery pick, it could potentially be more beneficial to them versus being a playoff team and maybe lose it in the first round. Again, never advocating for a team with this much talent to be tanking or anything like that, but it just crossed my mind quite a bit because, like, right before Tyrese Halliburton tore his Achilles, the Pacers acquired their own first round pick back. Right? So it's a unique circumstances where a team that was coming off an NBA Finals has their own draft capital. It feels like these teams that end up going to the NBA Finals have traded away everything of value to build the team to go to the finals, but they acquired that pick right back before Tyrese went down. So they kind of hold the keys to their own destiny in a way. Obviously, the lottery balls go this way, that way. You can fall from the best odds to the 5th pick. Anyway, but they kind of hold their own destiny. And what we've learned over the last couple lotteries is that you don't necessarily have to be a 15-win team in order to win the lottery. Think about the last couple teams. I mean, the Atlanta Hawks were not a team that won 20 games and they got resachet. The Mavericks, they were almost a playoff team. If it was for Anthony Davis and Kyrie going down, they probably would have been a playoff team. And instead, they won the lottery. So being in the back end of missing the playoffs, again, could net you a top pick. Now, that's a lot of variables to even get there, a lot of variables and cross fingers to even win the lottery or jump up in the lottery. But again, it's something that is in my head when it comes to the Pacers. They have the talent to make the playoffs, especially in the Eastern Conference. But would that be more valuable than getting the lottery pick? I don't know right now. I'm just spitballing. I'm just talking to you. The other teams, of course, the Boston Celtics, who were a second apron team, and we knew for a very long time that they were going to have to make some big time adjustments to their roster. They traded away Porzingis. They traded away Drew Holiday. Al Horford is still right now a free agent, but everybody's assuming he's going to be a Warrior one day. Luke Cornett. I always do that. Luke Cornett is now a San Antonio Spur. They just lost so many big rotational pieces for them to, cut that money. And again, very similar to the Indiana Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton, Jason Tatum is out for the entirety of next season, as far as we know. Tatum seems like he's healing like Superman, so maybe he don't be out for the entire season. But they're in unique circumstances too, where they also own their own first round pick. So could they do the gap year? Now, again, they still have Jaylen Brown, they still have Derek White, and they still have some of the other pieces that helped them be the great team that they were. They won a championship a few years ago, like Peyton Pritchard or Sam Hauser or so on and so forth. But I look at some of the moves they've done, and of course, these are money moves more than anything. But like Chris Boucher is going to be their starting center next season from him and Nemes Keita. One of those guys is going to be starting and like playing 30 plus minutes a game. Hoops, I have both of them starting, right? So Derek White, Anthony Simons, Jaylen Brown, Chris Boucher, and Nemes Keita. I don't know exactly how the lineup's going to look, but this roster right now is, you know what I'm saying? It's a really interesting lineup. And again, just like the Pacers, the Celtics staff, they've turned down all the reports that mention this being a gap year, but the talent is the talent at the end of the day. And this is like a team that's missed the postseason once since 2008 when they won the championship. So it's, it would be different for them to try to do something like this. And, they've been so good and bridging the gap without having their own draft capital. And of course, some of that and a lot of that is them having the picks that ended up being Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown from other trades and so on and so forth. But I'm just talking to the guys about, okay, when Tatum comes back from his injury, let's assume that he's not going to play this season. Let's just say take your whole time getting completely healthy, Jason. He's not going to play next season. How does this team look like a contender again once Jason Tatum comes back? And the only way to get there, at least in my mind today, August, whatever it is, I don't know, have a decent pick and draft well. Because as of next season, when it comes to the people that are on their roster right now, Chris Boucher will be a free agent, and then Anthony Simons, $27 million, will be off the books. We don't know exactly if he's a future Celtic or just a current Celtic. But it's not as like they're going to be able to open up a bunch of money in order to sign somebody at free agency. And the only way you acquire the top talent that can get you back into contention is if you trade one of your also top talented guys. You trade a Derek White, you trade a Jaylen Brown, and so on and so forth. And I just don't see that as a likelihood with this team. Now, I could be wrong, right? They traded away Marcus Smart, a guy that I felt like would never get traded from the Celtics, and they traded him at the perfect time and to maximize his value. But having a lottery pick in the mix here, especially if it's one of the top lottery picks, could just, again, bridge the gap from the Tatum-led Celtics to, again, still being Tatum-led, but more talent around him, even if it is younger talent. Mazzulla just got his extension, so again, they're definitely not thinking about this being a gap year, but it might be a blessing in disguise if they decide to run that. But we'll never know, right? Like I mentioned with the Curry thing. They didn't go into the 2019-2020 season thinking that Curry was going to break his hand. Knock on wood, I don't want to see any more injuries because we're not going to see Tatum, Lillard, Halliburton, Irving, who else am I missing? That's like four of the top most exciting players to watch, at least in my mind. So I don't want to wish no injuries, but you never really know in this association. Also, just like a passing thought when it comes to gap years. One team that I thought was going through a gap year was when the Raptors were in Tampa. You remember that arc where the Raptors had to play in Tampa Bay because COVID restrictions, they couldn't play in Toronto, and that felt like a gap year. And they ended up getting Scotty Barnes, and then they eventually traded the rest of the roster, right? There was no Kalo, there was no Pascal, there was no so on and so forth. But that felt like it was geared towards a gap year, but ended up being a full teardown. So I'm struggling with trying to think of different teams that went through gap years successfully or not successfully. You let me know in the comment section what I'm missing, because there's got to be more examples other than just the last 5 years of hoops.